I get it.
We'll call the meeting of the Grand Marais Planning Commission to order. We see that we have 3 members here today, just enough to get the work done. And now we have 4. Look at that!
Yes.
Bam! We are
Right on
so
time.
good.
Really good.
All right. Well, we have our consent agenda before us. We've got one item beyond that. I would take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Excellent. Done and done. We do know that Terry is out there somewhere in the ethers. We're just waiting for him to arrive.
And I'll ask on the record now, did we receive any more public comments about this?
No.
Any individual comments? Anybody?
Nope, I didn't hear a peep from anybody.
Okay. Very good.
Well, we can talk, right? Or-
Yeah,
Yes.
let's go ahead because we're public.
It's your meeting.
So, I mean, I guess, so looking through it, I think all this information
Yeah, there.
is helpful. I
Okay.
think having that information. Hi,
Hey there, Terry.
Hello.
Welcome. We're just getting started with the meeting here. Anton was talking, but he's always talking, so
right.
did you have anything you wanted to say before we start in with some questions?
No, I'm, not that I can think of at the moment.
Okay, sounds good. So, Commissioners, it's on us to ask any further questions that we have. We did get, thanks for adding more information
Yeah.
than we had before. And Anton, you had,
Yeah, I think, for me, it was helpful to be able to look at the information you provided. I can understand why it hasn't been fully engineered, but seeing how all the pieces fit together and some of the changes that you made based on maybe the system selections that we have in front of us, I think make more sense. I mean, even the wastewater, so one of the things that I guess the biggest thing now that we have this information in front of us that I kind of struggle with is just trying to think it through, and that's mostly my maybe my contractor head of figuring out, right, all these systems, you read through them individually and it's man, this is kind of amazing, right? It's nice. And so, but then I'm well, that's not my job. I don't know if my job is to we're not vetting if Terry's idea is gonna work, right? I mean, as far as the application of all of these components, I mean, in the business sense of it, right? The cost of figuring, I mean, I did some dirty math on electrical production, right? That's,
Hello?
hi. Uh-oh.
maybe this one?
So,
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's but that's my, if I look at it on the other side of what he's trying to do, I almost have less of an issue now that I see this information with the project. If I take out from it then trying to understand how in the world you could produce, the I mean, even if you just use the electrical production, right? That's the one I was stuck on. So if he needs to generate basically 11.8 megawatts for the year, is that right? 11.6 would be 116,000 kilowatt hours over the course of the year to satisfy the daily. This is where I'm getting in the weeds, because it's that's not our job to understand that what I mean? Is it? Our job is to understand if we're okay with putting something like this through this model that he's presented with this information. Are we okay with that sitting up there?
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
So I think
I mean,
all
I-
those questions are relevant. Are you the ones that are supposed to do the math? That doesn't seem like a good plan, but.
No.
No.
Are those relevant issues? Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
the only real thing, I guess, on the so that's more into the minutia of how these systems that you presented to us would actually work and like what that would mean for either the number of, you deduct the solar panels and you add in those flower turbines and like how many of those you'd have to have. I have no idea how all that works, but, again, that's not us to understand if that's, I'm sure you've done the math as well. The one question I had on this kind of redo, or this kind of is towards the bottom of your documentation, but the 4-page kind of that, kind of freshened up everything with this new information, Terry. The one question I had on it, which I think is pertinent to the zoning side of it, and is the first numbered item you have on there on page 1, it just says limiting all cabin units to 1-story structures. So the only clarification I wanted on that was, that's great, but also attached are multi-level units, in the drawing packet. So is the plan to kind of like eliminate the stacked cube, or?
The the cabin units themselves would be 1-story. The main building,
Yeah.
or whether you want to call it the registration building, that would be stacked.
Okay,
So that's going to have one portion, probably is going to be right about 22 feet high.
gotcha, okay.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what my takeaway from, from what he presented now with all of the pages of information that we got, was that
Okay.
this is helpful for me to be able to see that. And trying not to get tied down in the understanding of how one could potentially pull that off.
Right.
Do you know when you pulled up your I mean, it doesn't matter.
Okay. Well, the one question I had for you then, and it seemed like it came up a couple of times, and I'm wondering if you're feeling more satisfied, is with the water. I mean, that was one issue that seemed like it was bouncing around when I was reviewing the last two meetings, and I was wondering, are you feeling more satisfied with that? Does that seem like that? I mean,
Yeah.
just curious, because if you are, that makes a difference to me.
Well, I think, I mean, again, in this sense of it, the idea of not having composting toilets, not having, I mean, I'm assuming you're not, I mean, I guess maybe that's what we've been tied up in the whole time, is this stuff that I'm stuck with. I know if you're not gonna have any, mini split units are fantastic, but they use a bit of electricity. I don't know if that's in your calculations. And I don't know if, on-demand water heaters are fantastic, but you almost can't put an on-demand hot water heater on Arrowhead Electric or on City, simply because when those things fire up, they don't stage on, they're just like 100% go. And which is one thing when you're on a grid tied system, but now if you have kind of point of use type things, like, I mean, I think my biggest thing is, it's like, okay, like if I say, I think it's a really super cool idea. I think a lot of the questions have been answered as far as the systems that you're planning on using. But the how, just knowing like the complexity to it, and is that our job, is to say like, we want you go ahead, do this, and we don't want it to be a failure, right? But that's not really up to us. It's mostly just allowing, right?
Well,
Of course it's up to you.
Well, I mean,
Well,
there's-
it is up to us in the sense of.
So, yeah, I mean, when we think about it, I mean, we have to be clear about where it is. I mean, that makes a huge difference. I mean, this is going to be a very prominent thing, and it's going to be clearly on us that said, yeah, we checked that box. We said, yeah, sure, go ahead. It's not like that's not gonna.
Oh, sure.
I mean, so it is important that whatever happens in that space, that it's done as well as it can be done, right?
That it makes sense and
And
that
that we
it's
can,
gonna
and that we
work.
can, and that we can back it, like we
Yeah.
can say like, yeah, I mean, we know, I mean, I feel like I can say like, yeah, it's cool, it's interesting, and I think in a lot of other places, probably just be like, yeah, sure, go for it. But in this space, I feel like it's trickier,
It's a lot trickier.
It makes me feel like, I'm just not so sure. And I liked reading through everything, and it was a lot to read and a lot to listen to. You guys are fabulous on video. You guys are great. But I still kept coming back to the water issue. It's like, I don't have something in here that's like a third party that tells me like it's a good shot or it has a great, like if I could feel like there was somebody out there, somebody that could say like, hey, this is reasonable or something. I mean, to have the cell sheets and things, and I just didn't personally, I wasn't quite getting there. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything, but that's just where I was getting to, and I was feeling like, I'm not sure, and it's just such, I don't know, it's an important piece of land, and I don't know. I mean, I want something to happen to it. Go ahead, Greg.
So, for me, I think Terrence has done everything that we've asked him to do that he can
Right.
possibly supply us, right? As far as systems, we're gonna have limited knowledge on how those work and if they're ever gonna work, right? But we are gonna know if the consequences of it if they don't, right? I mean,
Yeah.
eventually we're gonna feel that.
Yeah.
Taking the camp out of the equation altogether in the project, I've been uncomfortable with that piece of land for a decade. And the biggest fear going into that sale was that it was gonna be condos or short-term rentals of some variety.
Mhm.
And I think the community had a fear of that as well. I think that no matter to whatever extent Terrence and crew want to improve the land and revegetate and do some different creative systems and things, we're now establishing a precedent on that property and on that bluff, right? That does change the character of that forever, right? And so are we okay? I'm not okay with that. But, because I just think that our job is we have to comply with the comprehensive plan that we have. And that plan says, look, we want these things, we want to support business and we want this, but we also have to protect this natural resource. We have to protect that backdrop to the city.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I'm stuck on. I like the project, I just think
Yeah.
it's just could be in another area and it would be super awesome, but I'm not cool with it where it is.
All right.
And I guess I agree with both of you. That bluff is important. We've already had a failed project there. I want to make sure that doesn't happen again. And I'm not into construction. I did appreciate reading all this information, and I went to some of these sites where they had some of these systems. I don't feel confident in saying that the wind, the solar, the septic, the water can all work together on that site and not fail. And that we don't have to cut more trees because the solar panels aren't in the right place, or the wind tower,
Yeah.
I can't picture, because I'm not an engineer, I don't have construction background. I would need more assurance that it really was going to work and not fail and not cause other issues. And I agree, that bluff is too important to do something like this with the information that I have right now.
The windmills are tricky too. Typically, that's a structure that we would permit with a land use permit. And when we do a conditional use permit, we want to know what all the structures are. And we don't have a plan that says, here's how many windmills, here's where they're going to be, here's how tall they're going to be. We've got some options, but we don't have a plan. That's been my problem with this all along, is do we really even know what we're being asked to approve? It's a concept. It's not a plan. It's not it's not buildable, right? We don't know what it is yet. It needs more work to develop into that.
Yeah.
And short of that work, which would include that third party somebody that's designing a system that looks at it and says, here's how all the pieces work together. I don't know how you can know that it's going to work. And it's completely irrelevant. You can decide to move forward without knowing and hope that you could even make conditions on the conditional use permit that would require it all, but it's a long ways from where we're at.
Yeah.
And whether it's compatible with the existing neighborhood is one of your key questions, and I think whether the systems work or not is relevant to that. Whether the location and character of the proposed use is one of your questions, and you've already started talking about that.
Yeah.
And for me, the idea that whether this is going to work or not, whether the systems are going to function or not, definitely goes to, does this impede the orderly development of the area? If it fails, it certainly does. Is it relevant to know that it's going to work? It is definitely relevant. And
Yeah.
a lot more work would need to go into it, I think, before you could be sure of that.
Right. Okay. Commissioners? I would deny this conditional use request.
I'll second that.
Although.
You're going to need some findings,
I was wondering if we.
so you need to explain yourselves.
All right. Going to our findings here, let's see so talking about the land use in the comprehensive plan, it doesn't seem like it's going to jive with that. It seems like it will be out of compliance with that. Compatibility with what's going on, I mean, that's what we can't know, or that's part of the unknown in this situation. And again, because we don't know how or if the project will work, regardless of our interest in it, spirit for it, the orderly development would also be possibly impeded because we don't have enough clear information of how it would work, what it would look like. And, so I feel like that's fair. I mean, that's kind of the nuts and bolts. I think again, it's that place in Cook County, in Grand Marais, that we all see every day. And that makes it even more important. And so, do we need a finding for all four, or we can just have the findings we have? Right on. Well, I'm sorry, Terry, but we haven't voted, so let's have a vote. All those in favor of the denial of this conditional use request?
Aye.
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 Okay.
All right, all ayes. Sorry, Terry. I think you understand where we're at with this, and
I do.
Okay.
And it's something you're gonna have to struggle with continuously on this piece as long as it's in private ownership.
Yeah,
okay.
amen.
Yes,
Yep.
I agree with that.
And as long as it's in private ownership, somebody, whether it's what we're proposing or whatever, it's always gonna be an issue for you, so good luck with that.
All right. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Yep. Seeing that we have nothing else on the agenda, unless you have something you want to pop in there, just for fun.
Close the loop on that. The city council will have to take formal action on it at their meeting next week. So your recommendation on a resolution with your findings will be in their packet.
All righty.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, we'll call that meeting to adjourn. And it wasn't 15